Hello everyone, Big Clingy here, and I felt I needed to make this video just to explain to all of you where I've been, because some of you have been asking questions. And yeah, that should pretty much answer them. I was actually feeling a bit under the weather while I was recording the Walhart Paralog. I'm not sure if it showed in my commentary at all, but after I finished that, I just wasn't feeling quite right. In fact, I haven't been feeling right since I recorded Gangrel's Paralog. Even that one I wasn't feeling 100%. So, things went okay. Then, a few days later, I got a huge headache. And then, a few days after that, the headache seemed to go away. But then I got a really, really bad fever. And it was a fever that lasted for several days. In fact, it's still a little bit there even now. Almost a week later, and yeah, I'm only just barely starting to get over it. So basically, where I live, in my city in Australia, there was a flu epidemic so severe that it was on the news. It's a strain of flu that normal flu vaccines don't even protect from. Not that means anything to me, because I am allergic to flu vaccines, so I can't even have them anyway. But yeah, there were people coughing all around uni, so I had a feeling that I was going to get sick. I just had no idea how sick. This is really bad. This is the worst I've been for a long time. And yeah, so I could not work on any videos at all. I couldn't even do any uni work at all for about an entire week. I could barely do anything, basically. You can probably still hear it in my voice. I'm just still not quite up to fully recording another episode, so that's where videos have been. That's why there's been a bit of a delay. I'm just as annoyed about it as you are. In fact, I'm probably even more annoyed about it because I just... so close to the end. So close, and then this happens. I pretty much haven't been sick at all since, 4 months ago, apparently, so it's one of the best streaks I've had, and then, well, I get sick really badly. But anyway, hopefully sometime soon, maybe towards the end of the week, I might be able to get back to recording new episodes. But just to inform you on progress, before I fell ill, I did practice the next Paralog, Paralog 20, and surprisingly I actually found it pretty easy. It's actually not that bad, especially compared to Walhart's Paralog. This one's nothing. It's actually... I did it on my first practice attempt, with very little problems. And hopefully I should be able to mimic that for when I actually go ahead and do it. I've got a plan in place, I know how to take on all of the enemies. It's actually pretty simple, so it shouldn't take too long to record once I actually get around to doing that. I've also already recorded a lot of the support footage from before the chapter. I actually record those often at the end of previous chapters, so I've already got that all done. It's just that I don't have the actual chapter footage to tack on. Also, I have recorded a certain somebody's birthday, so don't worry about that. I do have that birthday on record, so yeah, look forward to seeing that much later than it should be, but when I next upload. And as for other stuff, I can't really practice any further, but I did go ahead and complete every one of the Paralogs on my other file. The reason for that is, I'm going to need all of the characters unlocked for something that I want to show on the other file, and yeah, so I needed to do that, and I needed to complete all of the Paralogs. Now, doing this, weird things happened. So, for one... the next Paralog, Paralog 21, might be a little tough for my Mary Sue file. Well, only because it's just, my characters are a lot weaker compared to my overgrinded file, but I do want to research the AI of the enemies there a little bit. From what it seems like... okay, so basically the boss of that chapter is a swordmaster with maxed out skill, speed, and strength, and a legendary weapon with plus 50 critical. I want to avoid taking him on in direct combat if at all possible. The problem is, it looks like the enemies around him don't actually move until you get in his range. And that is kind of bad, so I might need to work out some way of, luring him relatively safely. Then there was Paralog 22, which I had a very strange experience with. I had an incredibly tough time doing it on my grinded file, but I have a feeling it's going to be a lot easier on my Mary Sue file because I haven't done as much grinding. Paralog 22 was a weird one in that, honestly, the stronger you are, the harder it gets. It's actually easier if you're weaker, so I'm looking forward to doing it on my Mary Sue file because I honestly think it's going to be easier. I just need to unequip lethality for everyone who has it. But other than that, it shouldn't be too bad. Then, however, there is Paralog 23, the last Paralog, Garden of Giants. That Paralog. Now, that one could pose some problems. To give you an idea, that Paralog gave me a challenge on my grinded file. In fact, I actually had to play it casual mode style and actually just... That file's also on casual mode, so yeah. I didn't reset when losing characters there. That was the only way I could do it. The enemies there are not only ridiculously tough, tougher than the final chapter, but there are 50 of them, they all rush at you right from the start, they give you no chance to choke points, so they pretty much will always gang up on the one character and just constantly pressure them until they fall. That's basically how the AI works. No matter how strong your characters are, it's very hard to endure the onslaught of about 50 of those enemies at once. They will just throw themselves at you again and again, all relentlessly on the one character until that character goes down. And, it's very, very difficult to avoid losing characters to that. There are also a ton of warriors that sometimes have counter. I actually got lucky on the attempt that I've just finished, where none of the warriors actually had counter. Now, I get the feeling that when I do take on this with my Mary Sue file, I'm going to have to keep resetting until none of the warriors have counter, because seriously, screw dealing with counter warriors in addition to everything else. I eventually was able to take on one entire side of the map using a character with Vantage, Wrath, and Vengeance, but I don't think I have anyone who can use that combination in Mary Sue's file, so gonna be annoying. Speaking of which, though, that's the main worry that I have with this chapter. It's not that I can't really beat it. I could quite easily beat it if I did some serious grinding, and that's the thing. I don't want to do that. The whole idea of this run that I've been recording for the Awakening playthrough is that it was going to be a minimal grinding playthrough. I would not grind at all, no DLC grinding whatsoever. I would only grind if it was absolutely necessary, and I would keep grinding to an absolute minimum. What that means is, I generally don't want to go through several reclass lines with my characters, because that makes the game to the point where it's just way too easy. I know that the final chapter is going to look like a complete joke anyway if I do complete Paralog 23, but I want to just make it as little of a joke as possible. I want to still keep some challenge in the final chapter, and if I grind to the point where the game wants you to take on Paralog 23, I get the feeling there's no way I'm going to avoid the final chapter being a complete and utter joke. It's just a part of my approach to this game. As much as a lot of people encourage me to grind in lots of classes and get tons of skills, I do not like doing that during the main story, because it makes things way too easy. The game was just not designed for that outside of the stronger DLC chapters. It just wasn't. This mostly comes from my first playthrough. I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. On my first playthrough of Awakening, I did every DLC the moment that it came out. And I also grinded heavily in exponential growth for good skills on the children characters. This resulted in all my characters getting stupidly overpowered. And it made the game just flat out not fun for me. Every single chapter was just completely effortless. Every single chapter. I just threw my characters into the fray, nobody was ever at any risk of dying, and enemies just died left, right, and center, and there was no point to continuing. it wasn't fun. It just wasn't fun. There was no challenge in the game at all. And I've been desperately trying to avoid that for this playthrough, and my worry is that I will unfortunately have to do that for Paralog 23, and that's the thing, I don't want to do that. That and it would take a really long time to actually grind that, so I've had a few ideas for compromises. Now, if worse comes to worse, I could actually just skip the chapter entirely until after beating the game, and record a run of that chapter on my other file. I still have a save file from before I beat it, so that's good. I could record that chapter on my other file, and yeah, just to show it there, maybe. Now, my other idea is that I do the chapter on my Mary Sue file, but I drop the rules that I've been playing by normally, and either don't reset when I lose characters from casual mode, or I use casual mode saves. Normally, these two things are things that I absolutely do not do in Fire Emblem. It just feels wrong to me to not restart a chapter when I lose someone, so even on casual mode, I generally just restart when I lose someone anyway. That's how I've been playing through this game so far. Also, I have not been using casual mode saves, outside from just saving at the start of the chapter, so that I don't have to re-record cutscenes. Because again, it just feels kind of un-Fire Emblem when you can just save at any time and just reload mid-chapter. So I don't like doing that, but I may have to do this for that chapter, I don't know. I mean, it might just be a compromise, because, let's face it, you were not meant to do this chapter before beating the game. This chapter was released several months after the game had come out. It was designed for parties that had beaten the final chapter months ago, and had grinded in multiple classes, so it was not meant to be done before the final chapter. The only reason why I want to do it before the final chapter is the character you recruit from this chapter comments on the final chapter a few times. So I want to get his comments recorded. So yeah, I may have to make a compromise when I actually get around to recording this, but that's not for a little while yet, so yeah. So my general plan is that the next few videos will be the remaining Paralogs. Again, Paralog 23 might have to be put on hold, I'm not sure exactly. I'll just have to see how strong I am once I actually get to that chapter, and then just see whether or not it's reasonable to actually take it on without grinding too much. Then it will be the final chapter. I plan to do the final chapter as one video and then the ending as another video. And then after that, I have a few bonus videos in mind. There are actually two different endings to this game, so I want to show the second ending, but on my other file. There's a reason for this, and you'll find out about that once I get to it. I also plan on showing off the game completion extras, and I might show off the Hubba Tester while I'm at it, because it's on the extras menu, but I haven't actually shown it off yet, so I might as well. Also, depending on how many supports I get before the final chapter of my Mary Sue playthrough, I might have to do another support episode, I'm not sure. I definitely want to make sure that I max out every parent and child support before I beat the game. And I also want to get every child pairing to an S that I can. That I'm at least planning on before the end of the game. Because, yeah, I want to show the paired endings that I can. There are a couple of extra supports that I want to show off, but I've actually gone ahead and unlocked those in the support library on my other file, so that I can just go ahead and show them from the library, and I don't have to grind for them on my Mary Sue file as well, because that would just... yeah, that would just take way too long. The main one is Tharia and Gregor. I've already unlocked all of those, well, apart from the S, but I've unlocked C, B, and A on my other file, mainly because I really want to show that one, because it reveals something very important about Gregor. The other one that I may want to show off for all the wrong reasons is Donald and Olivia C, because I want to rant angrily about that. Yeah, trust me, that support is just... why did they do that to that support? Why? You'll see once I get to it, but anyway, it's one of the supports that I absolutely hate, so I probably want to at least show that. It's basically a gigantic localization change for no discernible reason, and, They cut out a reference to a previous Fire Emblem game in favour of a generic Swan Princess story, and it really makes me angry. Other than that, I also want to do an episode where I show off the Spot Pass characters' conversations with each other from the Hot Spring Scramble DLC. Mostly because this is the only source of character development that they get, really. Oh, also, I have gone ahead and grinded the CB and A of Gangrel supports with male avatar on my other file for the support library. Definitely going to show those because they're so much better than the female versions. As for other bonus episodes that I plan on doing one where I talk about how internal level works, and giving a guide to how to grind, because it's actually a bit more complicated than most people think. The exponential growth DLC is actually not that effective when your internal level gets high enough, so I want to talk about that, and how another DLC is actually better for grinding. Another definite bonus episode that I'll do after finishing the game is talking about all of the unused content in this game. We've recently found out about the unused content in the game, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff there, so I definitely want to discuss that, and also a few pre-release changes to the game as well. Things in promotional materials that turn out to be different to the final game. I did intend to do a video of Double Duel at one point, but that might take a little while because I need to actually find someone else who owns the game. I know one person who has the game, but I'd need to meet them at uni and arrange a time to do it and get them to bring their game, so it might take a while to fully arrange that, so that might take a little while to actually get done. And then as for other videos regarding the game now, a huge ton of people have been asking me if I'm going to do the DLC, not realizing that I have actually made my stance on that clear in an earlier video. I said in an earlier video that DLC is going to be a separate series, done after the main playthrough is over, possibly even with a different file. And it's going to be on a strictly when I feel like it basis, mostly because, well, for one, it's going to be an extremely long time before I ever do Apotheosis, because I haven't even beaten that on my normal file, and I'm nowhere near strong enough at the moment, so, yeah. And as for some of the other DLCs, yeah, I'm going to have to try and arrange things. I'm going to need to get some Spot Pass guest characters for the earlier DLCs, just so they're not too easy. Because there's no way I'm taking them on with my fully leveled teams. That'd just make them completely pathetic. So yeah, that's going to be a completely different series, so it's not going to have any connections to the main playthrough at all. With one exception, I am planning on, okay, apart from the Hot Spring Scramble thing, I am planning on doing 4 DLC maps during the main playthrough. Now, 3 of them, you can probably tell what they are already. They're the only DLC that's actually relevant to the overall plot, so I want to make sure I do those. And then the other one is, well, it also is kind of relevant to the overall plot, in a loose way, so I want to do that one too. Other than that, though, all other DLC is going to be in a separate series, so, yeah, for those asking me if I'm going to do the DLC, it's not going to be part of the main playthrough. But anyway, that's basically all as far as my plans go for this game. And with that, I actually want to mention one more really random thing that I was just doing when I was looking around stuff while I was sick. I was reading some Fire Emblem translation blogs, and I came across some references to Pan and Henry's support conversations. I'd already been linked to these before, and I'd already looked at them, and they were quite interesting, and I have since gone and read the Japanese version and found out that, weirdly enough, this is one of the few conversations where Henry hasn't changed all that much from the Japanese version. The weird thing is, while Henry didn't change, there was a particularly significant detail involving Pan that did change. A reference in the S support that was cut out of the English version. In the Japanese version of Pan and Henry's S support, Pan specifically says that Henry reminds her of her younger brother who was killed by humans. In the English version, Pan never makes any reference to having a brother at all. In fact, I looked through all of Pan's other English supports, I Control F brother and couldn't find anything. For all intents and purposes, Pan never had a brother in the English version. It seems such a big detail to cut out. It's kind of weird. The English version Pan just says we've both lost our families, so let's be each other's family, whereas the Japanese version Pan specifically points out the resemblance that Henry has to her younger brother. Now, I can kind of see why this was taken out of the S support, because, yeah, comparing the person that you want to marry to your brother does sound a lot like incest. But I am surprised this detail was removed entirely. You'd think they'd at least insert the reference to Pan having a brother into one of the earlier supports, like the C, B, or A. But no, they just cut the reference entirely, so in the English version, Pan's brother was erased from existence. It's another one of those weird, arbitrary details the English version just removes for no apparent reason, and I find it just kind of annoying. But that does give me an idea, though. Originally, I was planning on making a few videos where I discuss this game's localization. I then realised that would take way too long. I have far too much to say about this game's localization, and it would just take a long time to just do it in the space of a few videos. But I had an idea. It doesn't seem like anyone on YouTube has done this before, but I had a thought. I could make a few very short Fire Emblem Awakening localization changes videos, where I cover a few brief changes that happened in the localization for some support conversations. Now, I'm going to restrict this to support conversations, mostly because I have access to the Japanese support to this game. There's a really good website that has all of the Japanese supports completely untranslated, so just purely Japanese text, so I can go ahead and read them there without any bias from fan translations. And yeah, so that has most of the supports there, but I don't have a resource for the actual Japanese script of the main game, without fan translations accompanying it. So I'd only really be able to cover supports, but I was thinking that I could cover a few localization changes in supports, just a few things that sparked my interest, like the reference to Pan's brother, and then of course I'd definitely be doing the pies in Chrom and Sumiya's supports. I've heard of a pie reference in the Avatar and Sully supports that wasn't even there in the Japanese version, so I'd look at that too. And of course the elephant in the living room, Henry and Olivia, I would definitely do at least one video on that. And, of course, I'd also do at least one video on Donald and Olivia's supports as well. Maybe talking about Rick and Olivia's supports as well, because there was a previous game reference there that was not cut out of the localization. But anyway, give me an idea of what you think, and if you have any requests for localization changes for certain supports, go ahead and leave a comment and I might look into them. Now, I might find that some of those supports did not change substantially from the Japanese version. Like, I recently looked into Yarn and Na to see if the Japanese supports were just as horrible as the English ones. Turns out that they are pretty much an exact faithful translation of the Japanese, with one exception that does not pertain to the actual marriage at all. So, if they turn out to be too similar, I probably won't make a video on them. But anyway, so yeah, leave comments if you have any suggestions, and yeah, as you can probably tell, my voice is pretty awful, so I won't really be getting back to the main playthrough for probably a few more days, so just be patient with me. But anyway, I hope you can understand, and I'll see you, well, when I next see you.